How's it going? My name is Cody, and today I'll be doing another fight analysis video, this time on Ivan Novachenko. Now, Novachenko has competed in a couple of different tournaments and is currently ranked number 12 in the HEMA rankings, but is most well known for his performance at Swordfish 2017. He has a really unique style of fencing, which actually led to a bit of discussion about judging after Swordfish 2017. So, I myself have a bit of a mixed opinion about his specific style, and I hope you'll soon see why in a bit. So, let's begin. This is Ivan Novachenko. So what Novachenko did was adopt an ice pick grip and attempted to stab down at his opponent. The opponent successfully blocks this attack, but makes the mistake of leaving the bind. When he does so, Novachenko continues to press in until his quillions slams into his opponent's face. Now, I do think that this level of aggression may have been excessive, but I have to applaud Novachenko for this exchange, mainly because he is utilizing a historical technique to good effect, and he was able to adapt to the changing situation effectively. When his stab was blocked, he wasn't phased and instead continued to move in. Now, I lumped these next two clips together because you will be seeing them a lot. These two moves form the foundation of Novachenko's fencing. Notice how Novachenko's opponent was the one pressing in and presenting threat from above. Novachenko backs up, identifies an opening, and instead of blocking the incoming attack, he throws a one-handed cut. Now, the interesting thing is that instead of getting a double, he actually manages to parry the cut. The second clip I am less impressed with, as I consider it simply to be a trick. He just slides in on his knees with no care for self-preservation. He knows that as long as he gets the hit a second or two before his opponent, he will get the point, and he is exploiting the rule set. I can't imagine anyone would fence like this if they were not wearing a bunch of protective equipment.
But really? Okay. Didn't see that at all.
So that was the same two moves we just saw back to back, except this time I don't think Novachenko deserved 2 points, and judging by the confused inflection of the commentator's voice, I don't think I'm alone. We see the opponent coming in with a cut, and Novachenko goes for a hand snipe. I hear the distinct sound of metal hitting metal, indicating Novachenko's hit landed on the quillions. The opponent then hit Novachenko on the arm, and we hear the distinct sound of metal hitting a gambeson. Listen to the two separate sounds. It then gets kind of messy. At best, it should have been no points, yet Novachenko got 2. I bring this up for 2 reasons. One, Novachenko's hit did not have much impact from the looks of it, especially when compared to the impact of the opponent's cut. Second, this theme continues into the finals, where Novachenko gets quite a few points I think were undeserved. Then, just to illustrate my point of lack of variety, we see the sliding on knees cut.
Strike low by Novachenko, parries with one hand, strikes Dennis to the ribs with one hand, spins round and parries over the back of his head.
This was amazing, and if more of Novachenko's fencing looked like this, I would be less critical. He throws a cut at Youngfist, and when it doesn't land, he begins to retreat. He manages to parry a strike single-handed, and when he sees an opening, he slashes across Youngfist's abdomen, then still manages to spin around and cover the afterblow to his head. Simply fantastic, if unconventional, fencing.
So they're setting each other up with a distance here.
Yeah, but the distance...
Strike low by Novachenko. Dennis not having a second of that. Goes straight for the head.
And then we get back into the bad. I just don't get it. Novachenko has so much skill and potential, but then he goes for cheap, doubling cuts like this. I mean, what did he think was going to happen?
But Dennis is...
One-handed blow, Dennis comes chasing in.
Novachenko is very snipey. He does well at keeping opponents at range and striking at small openings. It's not great fencing, but I get it. Though somehow that got 2 points. This is some tippity-tap bullcrap. That cut was blocked, and even if it did make contact with Youngfist, so much of the energy of the cut was displaced it wouldn't have done much of anything. Just terrible, terrible judging.
Differential for Novachenko. Oh, yeah, there we have it. Blow to the leg. And
Again, nothing we haven't already seen, but impressive nonetheless.
right.
Deep troubled waters. This is when they
They
have
pull
the
it.
skill set and the tools to figure stuff
Oh,
out.
we see one of these.
This is why some people say tournaments bring out the worst aspects of HEMA. This might consistently get points in a tournament, but it would be moronic to do in an actual sword fight. I have a background in emergency medicine, and I can guarantee you a cut to the thighs like that is not going to stop a full-grown man pumped full of adrenaline dead in his tracks. He might eventually die, but for the moment he would still present a threat to you, and now you're on your knees with your back to him. Things like this are not done within the Bloßfechten mindset. It leads to the sportification of HEMA, and in my opinion, should not be celebrated. This was the last exchange. All tied up, no more time on the clock. There was a long standoff, then suddenly Novachenko threw a one-handed strike, which led with his hands out in front of him, and Youngfist just blew right in. I was really amazed to see this happen, as it highlights failing to read your opponent. Novachenko zoomed ahead in points in the first half when he was able to keep Youngfist at range, but Youngfist had changed tactics and was now being much more aggressive. Novachenko did not adapt to this. He tried using the same strategy as before and lost because of it. So let's summarize some key points. There is no doubting that Novachenko is adept at one-handed strikes. He uses the extra range to play the distance game, and he adopts this mindset of being very snipey. He will sit back and wait for an opening to present itself, and when he sees one, he'll throw a very quick, very accurate one-handed strike. But if it doesn't land, he has no interest in staying in the fight. He will instead retreat. Now, there's pluses and minuses to this approach and this mindset, but I think a lot of it might be a symptom of having a poor close game. Whenever someone presses in, he tends to either double or lose. So how does this all stack up in points when compared to the top 10 HEMA attributes? Each attribute, by the way, is graded from 1 to 5. Unique style of fencing. I'm going to go ahead and give him a 5. I haven't seen anyone fence quite like Novachenko, and it was the entire reason I picked him for this fight analysis. Tricks versus techniques. I'm going to give him a 2. Let's be honest here. Almost everything he does is a trick, not a technique. When he throws a one-handed cut, granted sometimes he can parry, sometimes he can do something cool, but it often puts him in a very weak position to continue the fight. If you lunge in on your knees and your face is basically in someone's groin, you're not in a strong position to continue the fight. You might get a point, but it's a trick. It's not good technique. So, as much as I enjoy watching Novachenko fight, I'm going to have to give him a 2 on this one. Historical techniques. 2. I really kind of feel bad about grading him so low in this aspect, as it's part of what makes his fencing so unique. But really all he does is use Flug and Geisel and maybe a few others here and there, but he doesn't really use a whole lot of historical techniques, so I just can't grade him too highly in this attribute. A variety of techniques. Again, not too great. I'm going to give him a 3. And that's because he uses the same 4 or 5 techniques again and again. They're really interesting to watch the first couple times you see him, But as I kept watching all these videos, I kept seeing the same things happen each and every exchange. Speed and accuracy. I'm going to go ahead and give him a 5. He's incredibly fast and incredibly accurate. I think that's part of why he progressed so quickly in Swordfish, is that by the time someone noticed that he was initiating attack, it was already over. And it's very difficult to defend yourself, not only when it's an unconventional attack, but also when it's that quick and that well struck. Use of Measure. I'm going to go ahead and give him a 4, and that's because he is really good at keeping his opponents at a distance where he can snipe at them with one-handed attacks. I also saw a couple really good pommel strikes and thrusts, which require a good understanding of distance. I did deduct 1 point because when someone does press in and it comes to a close game, he tends not to do so well. Reading the fight. I'm going to give him a 3. He is really good at feeling out his opponent and seeing how the opponent will react to certain things at the very beginning of the match. He keeps his distance, he plays around a bit. But once the match progresses, he tends to do the same thing each and every time. He looks for an opening, and once he sees it, he throws his one-handed attack, and if it doesn't land, he runs away. He does the same thing regardless of how his opponent reacts. So when we looked at the gold match between Denis Youngfist and Ivan Novachenko, he was really successful at the first half of that match. He was like 6-0 against Youngfist. But once Youngfist changed his way of fencing, Ivan did not. He kept doing the same thing regardless of what Youngfist had adapted to. Tippity tap and boofle. 3. That's because we see both extremes in Ivan Novachenko. We see the boofle when he does that slide in on his knees, which relies really just on strength and surprise, as well as that reverse-handed stab we saw at the very beginning of the video. And we also see the tippity tap. A lot of his cuts will to the elbow or to the face, but were incredibly light and should not have received points. It's part of what led to all the post-Swordfish discussions on judging, was the amount of tippity taps that got points. Self-preservation. 2. Ivan Novachenko does a lot of really impressive parries, but for the most part he strikes without concern for himself. When he slides in on his knees or he throws those one-handed cuts, he's not really fencing in a way that keeps himself safe. He's relying on the judge calling hold or his protective equipment to do that instead of good fencing. So this might lead to lots of points in a tournament, but it's not really a mindset of a life or death duel, which is what I and a lot of other people are trying to recreate with HEMA. So I can't score him very highly on self-preservation when I can't imagine anyone would ever fence in that style if they didn't have all this protective equipment on. Footwork and body mechanics. 5. Not only does he do a good job at maintaining distance between his opponents, but he can cover that ground very quickly. He also uses good body mechanics in order to parry with one hand. He also spun out of the way of a couple of different strikes, and there was a lot of really good exchanges, especially in the beginning half of the fight against Denis Youngfist. He has very good footwork and body mechanics, even though on occasion he does overextend himself. That puts us at 33 out of 50. Not a great score for Ivan Novachenko. But that does not mean that I don't think Ivan Novachenko is any good. I think he has absolutely earned his place in the HEMA rankings and has quite a bit of skill. I do have mixed opinions about his style of fencing. On one hand, we shouldn't frown upon one-handed strikes. They have their place, they have their use, and we as practitioners should experiment a little and learn how to defend ourselves against that style of attack. Anticipate these kinds of tricks so that they don't predominate in these tournaments. On the other hand, a lot of what I saw in Novachenko's style of fencing was really oriented around trying to land a hit 1 or 2 seconds before he himself got hit. He wasn't that concerned with self-preservation, and he was really only going for points. And that's honestly just not the direction I want to see HEMA progress. That's all I have for you today. If you like the content, please do give me a like or subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Vi sunt latastra.